My name is Alice. I'm 33 years old, and I currently live and work in Seattle. I'm the founder and CEO of a media company that just passed the $100 million revenue mark. Just last week, Forbes put me on the cover with the headline, "The Woman Who Changed the Game." To the outside world, it looked like I was living a dazzling life. And then, on the very night I came home from that award ceremony still in my gown, makeup untouched, I opened my phone and saw an email from my family. "Alice, don't forget this coming Saturday is Daniel's 35th birthday party. Mom and Dad expect you to bring a worthy gift since you just landed that big contract." I read it 3 times. Not a single word about me. Not one happy birthday. Not even a simple "how are you? Are you tired? Do you want to celebrate?" That Saturday was my birthday. Have you ever achieved the biggest milestone of your life, only to realize that your own family is the last to care? If my story stirs something in your heart, leave a comment and share your thoughts with me. Don't forget to like and subscribe, because I'm about to tell you the whole truth behind a family that looked perfect from the outside. A story where maybe you'll see yourself in it. I was born and raised in the northern suburbs of Portland, in a 2-story house with a white fence, a rose garden that bloomed year-round, and an old swing in the backyard. Outsiders would say I had a perfect family. My father, Richard, was a strict but respected high school teacher. My mother, Margaret, was graceful and composed, always keeping the household in order with a calm smile, and my brother, Daniel, was the endless pride of the entire family. I remember vividly when Daniel made the middle school basketball team. Mom prepared a lavish dinner with garlic bread, creamy broccoli soup, and blueberry pie, his favorite. Dad called every relative to share the news, as if Daniel had just won an Olympic gold medal. And me? I was only mentioned if I brought home good grades, and even then, any praise came after a distracted nod. I don't recall exactly when I began learning to live quietly. Maybe it was when I turned 12, the birthday I could never forget. That afternoon, I sat at the dining table, eyes glued to the clock, waiting for the minute hand to drag itself forward in vain. Mom promised to be home before 6 p.m. Dad said he would try to cut short the parent meeting. I believed them. On the table sat a cupcake I baked myself. Not because I was good in the kitchen, but because I knew no one else would remember. I lit a small candle, one I had secretly taken from an old wedding decoration box in the basement. I blew it out alone. No one sang, no one hugged me. I sat there for 2 hours, then 3, then 4, until I heard the gate creak open. I jumped up, heart pounding with hope. But the loud laughter from the backyard stopped me cold. I stepped onto the porch and saw my parents, beaming, surrounded by relatives and close friends at a long table covered with a checkered cloth. On it sat a huge chocolate-frosted cake, topped with glittering words, "Congratulations, Daniel, on your full scholarship." I had never seen a cake that big, that beautiful. And Daniel? He stood in the center, grinning ear to ear, holding a bouquet from Aunt Caroline. No one noticed me, or perhaps no one wanted to. I stepped back, closed the door, and returned to the kitchen. The candle on my tiny cupcake had burned out. I quietly cleaned up the scraps, put the untouched cupcake in the fridge, and went upstairs, shutting my door as if I hadn't existed in that house that night. From that moment, I understood that in this family, I was nothing more than the blurred background behind Daniel's portrait. In the years that followed, I trained myself to suppress everything. No crying, no blaming, no asking. Each holiday, each birthday, each personal achievement, I reminded myself not to expect anyone to remember. And they never did. When I got into the high school advanced program with a scholarship from the STEM Foundation, Mom only said, "That's nice. But remember, Daniel got direct admission to Yale without an entrance exam." When I was the only student in my class invited to present at the National Student Conference, Dad nodded and said, "Whatever you do, don't overdo it. Women should stay modest." When I graduated college summa cum laude and gave a speech before thousands, my family sent a letter with 3 short lines. No gift, no dinner. And Daniel? He had an entire family album. Every birthday captured with candles, big gifts, crowded rooms, and cards from relatives I had never even met. I didn't blame him. Daniel wasn't cruel. He just lived in a world where everything good fell into his lap, while I fought tooth and nail for every small chance. He was the kind of son Mom would say, "Just try a little harder, Daniel will be so proud." I was the kind of daughter she'd say, "Work hard, but don't expect too much." That's why when I started my business at 29, no one in the family called to check in. When my company almost went under in year 2, I spent nearly 2 sleepless months alone. And when I succeeded, pushing revenue past 100 million, when the media finally recognized my name, the only thing I received from family was an email asking me to chip in for Daniel's expensive birthday gift. The feeling when I saw that email wasn't anger, not disappointment. It was something deeper, familiar, like a stab in a place already long calloused. I didn't cry. I simply reopened that old photo from my 12th birthday, me sitting in front of a lone cupcake, and asked myself, did I ever truly belong there? I live in a penthouse apartment overlooking downtown Seattle, where glass towers glow purple at sunset and the city hums below like a never-ending soundtrack. My office is less than a 10-minute drive, but many nights I chose to stay late, not because I had to, but because there I felt I truly existed. I'm the CEO of a thriving media company, over 100 employees, dozens of national campaigns, major partners like Clarion Health, Beacon Tech, Horizon Market. My name appears in newspapers, at conferences, on lists of entrepreneurs under 40. People call me the Iron Woman, the strategist, a symbol of a new generation of women rising by merit. But in my family's eyes, none of it mattered. Media is just hype, Mom once said at dinner. Daniel works in finance. He makes real money, not those flashy things on TV. I sat across from her, set my fork down, and said nothing. Daniel shrugged, smiled, as if the remark wasn't worth reacting to. That was him, easygoing, agreeable, always right in their eyes. Kids these days love glitter, Dad added. Daniel is practical, steady. He's the future of this family. I remember that dinner in the grand dining room of their Bellevue home. On the wall hung a photo of Daniel in a suit, receiving some award from a local finance council. There wasn't a single photo of me in the house. Sometimes I wondered, if I achieved something bigger, would they see me differently? But then I realized, in their minds, the ceiling for a woman like me never went past good enough. And anything beyond that looked like rebellion. You should think about settling down, Mom said when I bought my first downtown office. Men don't like women who are too ambitious. When I was chosen as a national representative for digital media innovation, Dad texted, "Good. Just don't let it interfere with starting a family." Meanwhile, Daniel only needed to propose a mid-sized investment project, and instantly the family group chat lit up. So proud of our son. Daniel deserves every success. Those lines scrolling across my phone felt like a dagger, pressing deeper, though I had trained myself to ignore it. I wasn't jealous. Truly. What I felt wasn't envy, it was a deep sadness. A cold distance with no end. A question I never dared ask aloud. Why was nothing I did ever enough? Maybe because you're a woman, Olivia once said when I confided in her. Some people never outgrow the prejudices served at their dinner tables. Olivia has been my best friend since college. a sharp lawyer, unflinching, one of the few who spoke the truth even when I tried to excuse it. But they're my parents, I repeated like a tired excuse. And their daughter is also a human being, not a tool to compare or carry the family's pride, she shot back, steady as ever. One night, after a major meeting, I came home late. While reheating leftover pasta, I noticed an old photo stuck to the fridge. It was me at Stanford, giving a keynote back when I was invited to return as a distinguished alumna. I remembered the stage, the lights, the thousands of faces listening, the applause that felt endless. I texted Mom, "I just finished my speech. I think you'd be proud." Her reply was curt, "Don't forget to send money for Dad's car maintenance." I didn't respond. Not because of money, but because suddenly it all seemed absurd. Like I was paying rent to keep my place in a family that always made me feel small. That's why when I got the email about Daniel's birthday, asking me to bring a worthy gift since you just landed a big contract, I wasn't furious. I just sat still, staring at the glowing screen. And then I laughed. Not a joyful laugh. A dry, hollow sound when you finally hit the limit of something that's been broken for years. I looked out the window at the streetlights reflecting on passing cars. And I thought, if I truly had no place in that so-called family, then why keep enduring? That Monday morning, a thick envelope arrived by courier at my office. No sender, just my name, typed neatly in block letters. My secretary, Julia, placed it on my desk while I was on a Zoom call with the strategy team. I opened it after the meeting, expecting maybe an invitation from a partner. But when I pulled out the card, I froze. Heavy cream paper, gold foil border, copper ink embossing formal like a wedding invitation. But it wasn't. It was an invitation. The 35th birthday celebration of Daniel Edwards, the family's pride. I reread the date, eyes landing on the line. Saturday, April 12th. I gripped the edge of the card, my palm going cold despite the heater humming in the room. April 12th is my birthday. Not a word about that on the card. No acknowledgement. No line saying that day was also the day I was born. Everything pointed to Daniel. All the lights, all the applause, all the pride, just as always. I unlocked my phone and scrolled back to the email sent out to all our relatives. My mother had written, "We want to organize something truly worthy of all that Daniel has contributed to this family. So, instead of individual gifts, we hope each member contributes toward one joint present, a Mercedes GLC, which Daniel has always dreamed of. With Alice's recent success, $50,000 will be a reasonable contribution." A reasonable contribution. I stared at those words as if they might burst into flames if I looked long enough. No one asked if I agreed. No one cared what I was going through. It was simply assumed as if I were a walking wallet existing to fund someone else's dream. That afternoon, I called my mother. She answered on the very first ring, her voice bright with excitement, as if she expected me to say, "I'll send the money right away." "Mom, I just got the invitation," I began, trying to keep calm. "Oh, wonderful. I want everything perfect for Daniel. The whole family will be thrilled if you support the main gift. The car has already been chosen. The deposit is paid. We're just waiting on your portion to finalize it." I sat down, leaning slightly against the chair, pressing one hand to my knee to keep it from trembling. "I can't contribute $50,000 toward that gift, Mom." There was silence on the other end for a few seconds. "Can't?" Her voice slipped, no longer cheerful. "You were just praised in the press. You signed a contract worth tens of millions. What is one car compared to that? It's not about the money. It's about the reason," I said, enunciating every word. "Saturday is my birthday. No one asked if I was planning anything. No one even mentioned me. It's just Daniel, like every year. But you expect me to pay for a celebration that falls on my own birthday, honoring someone else." I heard her sigh. "Alice, you've always been too sensitive. From childhood to now, you dwell on things that don't matter. I gave a small laugh, too tired to argue. Then consider this me drawing the line. I won't be contributing a single dollar to that party. There was a clink in the background, like dishes being set down, before a deeper voice entered the call. My father had taken the phone. "Alice," I heard, "if you choose not to participate, that's your decision. But let me be clear, don't be surprised if you're no longer considered part of this family." I leaned back fully in the chair, my throat tightening, but my voice remained steady. "You just confirmed what I've felt for decades. My place in this family has never been unconditional. It has always come with a price, and today, I'm done paying it." I hung up before hearing anything more. That evening, I sat alone by the window, watching the rain fall. April in Seattle is always cold and damp, but I no longer felt the shiver inside me. Not because I wasn't hurt, but because I had finally chosen to rise from the empty seat at a table that had never really saved a place for me. I set my phone aside, opened my laptop, and typed into the search bar, "lakefront houses near northern Michigan." A silent desire began forming inside me. I needed a place where no one had the right to dictate, where I could step out without asking permission. I needed a sky of my own. And maybe this was where I would start looking. I cleared out the storage room one Sunday morning, while Seattle's drizzle tapped like lullabies of memory. The attic corner I rarely visited was dusted in a thin film, but in that quiet order, I felt myself slowly stepping out of the suffocating cycle of the past days. I had no real purpose, just wanted to keep my hands busy so my mind could breathe. I pulled box after box from the shelves, sorting old company files, a few college photos, campaign drafts from when my firm was still new. But then my hand brushed against a faded brown wooden box with a tiny rusted lock, and my heart tightened. On the lid, in delicate purple ink handwriting I could never forget, were the words, "For Alice, when you're ready." Beneath it was the graceful signature of my grandmother, Eleanor Hathaway. She had been the only person in my life who ever truly saw me, who touched the unspoken part of me with her gentle eyes and simple words. "You don't have to earn love." She passed when I was 26, after a stroke. My family had focused only on arranging the funeral for Margaret's eccentric mother who preferred reading to cooking. I wasn't allowed to keep anything from her, except a lavender-embroidered handkerchief. I had no idea how this box had ended up in my apartment. Maybe someone in the family brought it when I moved, or maybe she had sent it before her death. The only thing I knew was that I had never been ready for what I was about to find. The lock opened easily when I tried it with a small key still on my old school keychain, something I had thought useless. Inside were neatly stacked papers, letters, black and white photos, a soft leather journal, and a thick file tied with fabric string. I pulled the file out first. On the cover were the words, "Inheritance Documents, Eleanor Hathaway." As I read through the pages, my vision blurred. It was unmistakable. My grandmother, in her final years, had drafted a legal notarized will, leaving the nearly 5,000 square foot Bellevue estate to me, Alice Edwards. She had written clearly, "I leave this home to my granddaughter, the only one in this family who understands the true meaning of a home." Further pages carried verification from the law firm Norwood and Haynes. Signatures, dates, all valid. But then there were other documents, apparently drawn up a year later, papers transferring the property to Daniel Edwards. The handwriting on those newer papers wasn't hers. The margin notes, the edits, all pointed to interference. I gripped the edges of the paper, palms slick with cold sweat. A sharp echo rang inside my head, not about the house itself, but what it represented. Years of feeling sidelined, erased, and now it was confirmed in black and white. They hadn't only denied me recognition, they had taken away the one thing my grandmother had given me unconditionally. I sat there staring at the pages for a long time. Deep down, I had thought favoritism only showed in the way they praised Daniel, threw him birthdays, called him the pride. But now I saw it had gone much further. It had become action, deliberate, cutting me deeper than I had imagined. I took the leather journal from the bottom of the box and opened it carefully. Inside were her familiar notes, her thoughts from her final years. Each page carried her worries, her concerns about how her daughter was raising her grandchildren, the coldness she saw in Margaret's eyes whenever my name came up, and the sadness she carried, unable to do more. Alice has eyes like her mother when she was young, she wrote, but the girl speaks less, endures more, and always tries to do everything perfectly so no one can find a reason to love her. I closed the journal, my hands trembling. Each line tore through the armor I had built around myself. In the silence, I felt her presence beside me, telling me I wasn't imagining my loneliness. I hadn't been crazy, overly sensitive, or misplaced as they claimed. I organized the papers, snapped photos of each page, and called Olivia. She answered immediately. "What's going on?" "I just found my grandmother's will, the original, with legal certification. But the house is in Daniel's name." A short silence, then she asked slowly, "You're certain?" "I'm looking at it right now. I'll go to Norwood and Haynes in the morning. Send me the pictures. If there's forgery, I'll find it." I sat still after hanging up. Outside, the rain tapped gently on the glass roof, steady like a heartbeat regaining rhythm. Everything was in chaos, but strangely, I felt calm. No more doubts, no more wondering, only the truth. And I wouldn't let it be buried again. I arrived at Olivia's office Monday morning, carrying all the documents in the black leather bag I usually used for major meetings. The Seattle sky was gray, drizzle clinging to the windshield, but inside the law firm where Olivia worked, everything was bright, alive, as if the outside world had slowed. She was waiting on the 6th floor, in a small room paneled with oak, glass windows overlooking the park. On the table were 2 cappuccinos and a stack of files she had prepared the night before. After my call, I sat down, opened my bag, laid the documents on the table, and slid them toward her. Olivia put on her glasses, reading every page carefully, her expression shifting from focus to grave. "This is the genuine original," she said, pointing to the notarized seal. "And it doesn't appear to have been revoked, which means legally the will leaving the estate to you is still valid. Any later transfer without proper proof may be considered inheritance fraud." I nodded, silent. It felt surreal, like touching a part of the truth that had been hidden away, now rising like a spring about to burst. Olivia picked up her phone, typed quickly, then looked at me. "I'm requesting our internal investigators to review all property transfers from your family in the last 10 years. I'm also sending the signatures to a handwriting expert." She paused, meeting my eyes. "Are you ready to see this through?" I tightened my hand around the warm coffee cup, heat seeping into my palm, grounding me. "I've been silent too long, Olivia. If I don't stand up for myself now, then when will I?" She gave a small nod, then pulled her laptop closer, opening a series of digital files. "I also found something else, and I'm afraid you need to see it." On the screen was a complex chart, company names, financial transactions, contract dates. My eyes stopped at a familiar name, Horizon Markets, one of my major clients, secured through personal connections from my days as a senior media strategist. Daniel worked indirectly with them through a third party and investment firm. He posed as their financial advisor and took brokerage fees from deals you vouched for. I froze. "You mean he used my name, my reputation to negotiate and pocket commissions behind my back?" Olivia hesitated, then nodded. "Not just once. At least 3 times Daniel signed as a financial consultant, using inside information from brands you connected. The payments went to a private investment account under a shell company he registered in Delaware, where ownership doesn't need to be disclosed." I don't know how long I sat there, eyes fixed on the lifeless data, while waves churned inside me. This wasn't just betrayal, it was systematic exploitation. Daniel hadn't only taken my inheritance, he had siphoned off the very credibility I spent years building. Is there evidence strong enough to present to the family? I asked, my voice low. Olivia slid me a printed report. Contracts, emails, bank records. If needed, I can request the court to freeze his assets while it's investigated. I looked at her. I don't want to take it to court, not yet. I want them to see it with their own eyes. She frowned. You mean, I'll go to that party, Daniel's birthday, the one they expected me to fund, but not as a guest. I'll go as a statement. Olivia tilted her head slightly, half surprised, half worried. Are you sure about this? I'm not going there to ask for pity. I'm going there to reclaim the truth. And I want them to face it themselves, not through a letter, not through a lawyer, not through the press, face to face. She pressed her lips together, then nodded. All right. Then, we need to prepare carefully. I'll print every document, organize them chronologically. The signature records, the inheritance papers, the transaction logs. I'll also be at the party, watching from a distance. If anything goes wrong, I'll step in at the right moment. I exhaled, for the first time in days, feeling a little weight lift from my shoulders. Not because everything was solved, but because I knew I wasn't walking in alone. On the drive back, my hands held the wheel, but my mind was far from the familiar turns. I was replaying fragments of my life, the places erased, the moments forced into silence, all the phrases I had heard 100 times. Daniel needs your help. It's just a small favor. Family comes first. But this time, those words would stand against evidence. And I would no longer nod quietly. A red light. I stopped, glancing at myself in the rearview mirror. My face was pale, but my eyes no longer hid. I had never wanted to fight my family, but maybe I had to fight for myself, no matter who stood on the other side. On Wednesday morning, I arrived at the headquarters of Aria Events, a luxury event planning company serving corporate clients and the upper class of the Pacific Northwest. Their office sat on the 32nd floor of Union Center, filled with natural light and the faint scent of citrus oil drifting in the air. I had worked with them before, on a product launch for an organic cosmetics brand last year. They were precise, discreet, and elegant down to the smallest detail. That was exactly what I needed now. An event crafted carefully, polished, and dignified, yet unforgettable to everyone inside. The one who welcomed me was Mia Douglas, the creative director. Early 30s, hair in a neat bun, voice soft but sharp. She led me to a private meeting room where an iPad already displayed 3D renderings of event spaces. I want a private party on April 12th, I said directly. Intimate but formal. No more than 50 guests. An open space, overlooking a lake if possible. And it needs to be within a 3-mile radius of the estate on Glenview Drive. Mia blinked but didn't pry further. She typed a few lines, then turned the screen toward me. We manage a venue at Windmere Lake. It's 2 miles from the Glenview estate. A mid-century style villa with a wide garden, direct view of the water, capacity of about 60 guests if tables are set outdoors. I nodded the moment I saw the photos. The clear blue lake, tall pines surrounding it in solemn silence, the smooth lawn below, the wide stone steps leading straight from the doorway to the backyard. It looked like the place to end a long chapter and begin something truly my own. Start planning right away, I said. I'll handle the guest list. As for the decor, colors, menu, sound, lighting, I want it minimal, warm, nothing flashy. But when someone walks in, they must feel this is my space. Clear. Unmistakable. Mia smiled. We'll make sure of it. I left Aria Events with a packet in hand, venue details, menu options for light vegetarian fare, audiovisual equipment requests. Because that night wouldn't just be about gathering people who loved me to celebrate. It would be about showing them what they had never seen, the story I had kept hidden in the dark for too long. That same afternoon, I handwrote invitations to each guest. Jennifer, my communications manager since the company's earliest days. Joseph, the data specialist who once stayed with me until 3 a.m., finalizing last year's financial forecast. Linda and Tom, the first angel investors who believed in me when all I had was a handwritten business plan and a few PowerPoint slides. I didn't invite anyone for prestige or advantage. I invited those who had quietly placed their trust in me, who stood beside me when no one else did. And I was certain they would see themselves in the story I was about to tell. Meanwhile, Olivia and I worked every evening to prepare the documents that would be presented at the party. We printed my grandmother's original will, compared it with property transfer records from the land office, analyzed cash flows tied to Daniel's company accounts. Olivia arranged everything in chronological order. Each bundle was sealed in an ivory envelope, stamped with red wax, embossed with an H, the initial of Hathaway, my grandmother's name. A small detail, but it felt like I was holding her pride in my hands. In parallel, I spent a weekend back at my grandmother's old apartment in Green Lake. It was rented now, but I asked the building manager to let me in for a few hours just to sit. I needed to feel the scent of books again, the warm yellow glow from her reading lamp, the oak cross on the wall, and the framed calligraphy she had written herself. No one may take what belongs to you. I brought along an old camera, taking pictures of the window corner where she used to sew, the small dining table with only 2 chairs, the half-finished knitted blanket still draped over the sofa. That night, I printed them all on thick paper, set each photo in glass frames, numbered them like a personal exhibition, not to boast, but to tell others where I came from, how I had lived, and who truly taught me to love without condition. 7 days before the party, Arya confirmed that every arrangement was complete. No press, no live stream, no hashtags. I didn't want noise. I wanted sincerity. That evening, I sat in my office, reviewing the finalized guest list under the golden desk light. 48 names, each one a journey. I held a glass of wine, quietly gazing out at the night sky. The city below buzzed with traffic while I was preparing to walk into the most important conversation of my life. Not to persuade, not to beg, but to put a period on years of birthdays ignored, names left unsaid, and a life treated as less. I didn't hope to change my parents or Daniel, but I wouldn't let them keep hiding in the comfort of pretense. And I knew I could only do that standing in a space built by the truth itself, by hands that truly saw me. No hiding, no compromise, just me, and what was mine. On the night of April 12th, Bellevue was draped in a fine rain, like silk gliding across stone pavements, reflecting the warm glow of golden lamps lining the fence of my parents' estate. Inside was Daniel's 35th birthday celebration, the golden sun, the Edwards heir, the one every gaze in the family turned to as though no one else was worthy of carrying the legacy. I parked 3 houses down from the main gate, deliberately choosing not to have the driver pull into the driveway. No loud music, no camera flashes, just me, in a simple black jumpsuit, one hand holding an umbrella, the other a small box wrapped in matte silver paper. No ribbons, no tags, only a tiny steel plate etched with 2 words, "Congratulations." The iron gate opened silently. Inside, the front lawn had been transformed into a reception area with a white canopy. Waitstaff in tuxedos moved gracefully. Most of the guests had already arrived. I didn't know many of them, but from the way they shook my parents' hands and called Daniel Man of the Year, I understood enough. The party unfolded in the backyard under a massive tent, chandeliers hanging as if this were a 5-star hotel ballroom. I walk slowly past clusters of people, listening to the clinking of glasses, the polite laughter, and the repeated chorus. Daniel deserves this. I spotted Daniel in the center, surrounded by friends and colleagues, navy suit, dark tie, laughing easily. My father Richard stood beside him, holding a glass of red wine, smiling like the master of the house. My mother Margaret wore a burgundy silk gown, her hair pinned high, resembling the matron of a southern European villa. None of them noticed me, or maybe they did and chose to ignore it. I didn't rush. I circled by the bar, set the small box on the marble counter, and signaled the waiter. Later, when the gifts are opened, make sure this is the first box handed up, I told him softly, so no one else could hear. He nodded, a bit surprised that it bore no name. I slipped into the crowd like a shadow. Whispers followed as people realized I was there, a few handshakes, quick greetings, as if to confirm I hadn't come to make a scene. "Oh, Alice, long time no see. Congratulations on the big contract, you've done so well. I heard you're about to be featured in Times, that's incredible." I smiled politely, nodding. They didn't need answers, they only needed decorum. A small chime rang from the Oak stage. One of Daniel's closest friends, Brandon, a venture capitalist, took the mic. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us tonight to celebrate Daniel. We'll now move on to the gift opening, something I'm sure Margaret and Richard have been looking forward to all week." Laughter rippled, followed by scattered applause. My mother walked up, Daniel seated beside her. At the center, the presents had been arranged, stacked carefully. The first one handed over was the small box, puzzling everyone with its plain look, no ribbon, no flowers, no luxury brand logo. "Oh, who sent this?" Daniel asked, his hand already on the lid. "No name on it," the waiter replied, glancing briefly at me, just as instructed. I stood at the edge of the yard, leaning lightly against a lamppost, hands clasped together. Everything was in place. Daniel opened the box. Inside was no ordinary gift. Just a brown leather envelope of documents, a bound packet of photos, and a handwritten note. "Congratulations for all you've achieved through others." I saw his eyes flicker. He opened the first folder, his gaze catching the logo of Horizon Markets. The following pages showed contracts signed under the brokerage he owned, bank records proving commissions wired into his personal account. Whispers spread quickly through the crowd. Daniel tried to stay composed, but his hands trembled slightly as he flipped to the third page. Then came the photos, him in private meetings with a third-party representative, with timestamps, locations, and confirmation emails I had pulled from the internal system. "What is this about?" A middle-aged man in a gray suit asked loudly, his voice cutting through the cooling air. "Daniel, did you use Alice's name to secure credit for these deals?" Daniel opened his mouth, but before he could speak, I stepped forward. I didn't snatch the mic, didn't make a grand speech. I simply stood there, one hand resting on the edge of the stage, my eyes locked on my parents frozen in the front row. I didn't come here to apologize or explain. I came to give this family a gift, the truth. I turned to Daniel. "You used my relationships, the reputation I spent 10 years building, for your personal profit. You did it more than once. And you did it while the family demanded I put up $50,000 to buy you a car, calling it a reasonable gift." Then I looked at my mother. "You always said family comes first. So, tonight, I'm letting the family face exactly what you've enabled, protected, and chosen for the past 33 years. No one spoke. Only the sound of the night wind moving through the tent, and the rustle of papers trembling in Daniel's hands. My mother covered her mouth. My father shot up from his chair but couldn't get a word out. Every gaze now turned toward me, not out of curiosity, out of shock. I looked around. I didn't come here to ruin the party. Please, carry on. Only, There's a truth that needs to be put in its place before all these congratulations become meaningless. I stepped down, saying nothing more. My black jumpsuit brushed the edge of the buffet table, then melted into the crowd, parting around me like a silent wave. Behind me, Daniel's voice called out, faint, almost desperate. But I didn't turn back. I didn't need an explanation. What needed to be revealed no longer lived in words. I walked slowly toward the dining table where a brown leather case sat, the one I had carried but left untouched until now. People still stood frozen in place, some pulling out phones to snap pictures, others avoiding my eyes, while whispers sharpened into clear questions. What's happening with the Edwards family? Who is she? Did Daniel really cheat? I unlocked the case with a soft click. No one stopped me. Even my parents hadn't yet recovered from the first blow. I lifted out a file, thick but neatly bound in a transparent folder, and raised it high with both hands. On the cover, bold black letters read, Original Will, Eleanor Hathaway, notarized, March 4th, 2017. I turned to Daniel, still sitting frozen. He looked like he had just fallen from the pedestal he had built for himself. None of you ever asked what my grandmother left me when she passed, I said, my voice steady. No one cared what she wrote, what she signed, what she entrusted, because you all assumed she had nothing of value. But she did. She had a home. And she left it to me. I opened the file, flipping quickly to the page stamped with the red seal of the Seattle Notary Office, and held it high. This is my grandmother's final, legal will, with signatures, witnesses, and an official seal. In it, she left the entire estate on Glenview Drive to me, not to Daniel, not to my parents. To me, the only one she considered true family. The entire backyard fell silent. Only the unconscious clink of glasses and the rustle of leaves at the forest edge remained. I turned to my father, Richard Edwards, the man who had stood at a podium for 30 years preaching ethics, honesty, and integrity in education. Do you remember what you said to me 3 days ago on the phone? That if I didn't pay for Daniel's car, I'd be erased from this family. He didn't answer. His eyes locked on the papers in my hands, as if searching for a loophole. I don't need my name in this family anymore. Because this property, the very house you're standing in, hosting parties and calling a home, belongs to me. The law confirms it. And under the law, any act of alteration, forgery, or transfer without the heir's consent is prosecutable. I glanced at Olivia, who had quietly stepped from the back row. She held duplicates of the documents and handed them to 2 legal associates who would file the lawsuit Monday morning. This house was transferred to Daniel's name in 2019, just 6 months after my grandmother's death. Yet, at that time, her will had not been revoked. There was no petition, no settlement agreement, and the signature on the deed I stopped, fixing my eyes on my mother, was forged. Margaret went pale as though the blood had drained from her face. She clutched the back of her chair, lips moving without sound. That signature has been verified by 3 independent forensic experts, Olivia said firmly, finishing for me. And we will file charges for forgery of inheritance documents, unlawful seizure of property, and the emotional damages that have lasted 6 years. Everything shattered like crystal hitting marble. No one spoke. Even Daniel couldn't argue. He shot to his feet, avoiding every eye, and bolted toward the main gate. His shoes struck the stone yard in sharp beats, like a clock counting down the collapse of a family once labeled perfect. I didn't follow, nor did I need anyone to stop him. What needed to be said had been said. What needed to be shown now stood exposed under the light, in the very party meant to polish false glory for someone unworthy. My father sank back into his chair. My mother wept, but no one handed her a tissue. The hugs, the congratulations, the smiles had vanished, Guests began slipping away. No one wanted to linger. No one wanted their name tied to an inheritance scandal, soon to be broadcast through court filings and a lawyer's statement. I picked up the case, snapped the lock shut, and looked at Olivia. She gave a single nod. I didn't look at my parents as I left. No goodbyes, no apologies. Only my footsteps firm, deliberate, echoing through a backyard now hollow as a ruin. At the front gate, my car waited with its headlights on. The driver opened the door. I stepped inside, soft interior light reflecting against rain-streaked glass. I sat still, silent. My hand rested on the case, fingers brushing the smooth leather edge. Inside wasn't just legal proof. It was the chapter of my life I had quietly recorded, arranged, preserved for this exact moment. Not for revenge, for clarity, to put the right name to every wound. And tonight, every wound had been named. To the right place, to the right people, in the right light. By noon on April 13th, sunlight filtered through oak branches surrounding the lakeside estate at Windmere. I stood in the kitchen with Jennifer and Linda, sleeves rolled up, the scent of baking filling the air. Outside, a long oak table stretched across the grass, draped in cream linens, sprigs of asters and fresh eucalyptus laid down like a natural ribbon. No lilies, no red roses, nothing showy or staged. Every detail was something I had once longed for but never dared say. Olivia was the first to arrive, as always. She came with a bag holding a mini projector, along with 2 bottles of white wine from Willamette Valley. Setting them on the counter, she glanced at me, her eyes still sharp and kind after a week of strain. "Did you sleep last night?" she asked as I arranged glasses on a tray. "I think so." I smiled faintly. For the first time in months, my mind wasn't trapped in a meeting or a call from Mom. Jennifer slid over with a tray of warm oatmeal cookies. "Well, this time," she winked, "it's Alice's birthday for real. On the right day, for the right person." I didn't answer, just bowed my head in gratitude and went on arranging the fruit platter. Guests trickled in from early afternoon. No one brought strangers, no one wore eyes of judgment or clung to others for status. They hugged, laughed genuinely, told ordinary stories, shared truths long unsaid. Joseph brought his guitar, sat cross-legged on the porch, strumming old tunes that softened the air like a summer picnic, even though it was still spring. I sat at the long table, sunlight glinting gold through the wine glasses. The smell of fresh grass, birdsong, and bursts of laughter made me feel like my heart had finally been released from an invisible cage. I listened to Jennifer talk about almost quitting to open a cafe, Tom share the biggest failure of his investing career, and Linda beam about her daughter being accepted into interior design without formal training. No one boasted grades. No one asked me, "When will you marry?" As the sun leaned westward over the lake, Olivia stepped onto the porch with a laptop and projector. She asked everyone to move toward the wooden deck, where simple chairs had been arranged, facing a white sheet strung between 2 tall pines. "This won't be long," she said once everyone settled. "But there's something I think Alice deserves to see on her birthday." I turned to her, surprised. She only smiled, nodding gently. The video began with a shaky frame, a worn living room corner, yellow light filtering across lace curtains, and a familiar pendulum clock. My grandmother Eleanor Hathaway sat in her teal armchair, white hair pinned back, eyes as deep as I remembered. My granddaughter, her voice filled the air, warm and steady. "If you're watching this, it means you've reached a point in life where you need to be reminded of your true worth." I froze, fingers tightening against the chair edge. "I don't leave you fortunes nor fame, but I leave you one thing, my trust. I chose you, not because you are Margaret's daughter, but because you are yourself. You always rose on your own, always knew in your heart what is right, what is kind." She paused, her gaze fixed on the lens as if cutting through time. The Glenview house isn't a decoration. It sheltered me through many storms, and I want it to remain a haven for someone who knows love without calculation. You are the only one in this family worthy of that. Not because you succeeded, but because you never gave up your kindness, even when wounded. Tears spilled before I could stop them. The world around me faded, leaving only her voice and the thrum of my racing heart. I hope you won't use it to prove anything to anyone, only to protect yourself when you've been placed in the wrong place. The screen dimmed. Silence fell, not heavy, but profound, like when one finally stands before a truth long left unsaid. Olivia quietly moved beside me, sitting down without a word. I rested my head against her shoulder. I felt wholly seen, not for achievements, not for what I gave others, but simply for being me, just as my grandmother had said. Jennifer laid a hand on my shoulder, whispering, "You don't have to prove anything anymore. We've known all along." I looked around. The people beside me didn't need me to be perfect, didn't need me to sacrifice, to bow, to carry weight. They only needed me present as I truly was. I stood, walking to the porch edge where the lake glowed orange with the setting sun. Ripples spread from a small boat anchored offshore. In that moment, I didn't think of lawsuits, or Daniel, or Richard, or Margaret. I thought only of my grandmother, of a house, of a 12-year-old girl who once waited beside a homemade cupcake, and who now stood taller in the tender light of dusk, her heart slowly healing. 1 year after that fateful party, the Glenview Drive estate had taken on a new life, not as a backdrop for grand dinners or staged family portraits, but as a place where women who had been silenced entered with determined eyes. I named it the hearth, not just the fireplace, but the warm heart of a home, the place where rebirth begins. The 50-square-meter living room that once held framed photos of Daniel's graduation and my father receiving his Teacher of the Year award had now become the main training space. The walls were repainted a soft ash gray, hung with artwork from young local women painters. Every Monday morning, the room echoed with the voices of women learning to draft business plans, calculate cost sheets, and research markets. No applause, no cameras rolling. Yet I could see the sparks of light quietly kindling within them. Upstairs, the reading room my grandmother had used on quiet afternoons was now my office. I kept her old wooden desk in place, and a small photo of her with me at 6 years old still sat on the shelf near the window, where sunlight cut across like a silent greeting. The lawsuit ended after 8 months. The court declared the forgery of inheritance documents a criminal act. Daniel was ordered to return all financial gains he had taken from the house and was barred from any investment consulting activity for 5 years. As a result, financial partners pulled out of his ventures. The financial press didn't write much, but in the industry, word spread far enough to erase his invitations from meeting calendars. I hadn't seen him since that night at the party. No letters, no calls. No apology. I didn't expect one. My parents moved to a small house near Spokane, saying it was to rest and avoid the noise. I didn't stop them. I didn't visit. Recently, my mother had sent me postcards, her familiar but hesitant handwriting forming tentative questions. "Are you doing well these days? I heard the center is thriving, I'm glad. Last night I looked through old photos. There's one of you in the lavender garden. You looked so sweet." I didn't reply to all of them, but I kept them. Not to forgive, but to remind myself that some doors could stay closed without needing to be locked. My 34th birthday came on a rainy afternoon. Seattle was always damp and cold in April, but that evening the house glowed with orange lantern light strung along the porch. Jennifer, Linda, Joseph, and Olivia each brought something they had made themselves: a carrot cake with lemon frosting, a box of lavender-scented candles, an ink painting, a few rare books about women in business history. No one asked if I felt sad my family wasn't there. No one mentioned Daniel or the trial. "We're here for you," Olivia whispered as she placed a linen-wrapped envelope on the table. Inside it, a scholarship program we had just completed together. Jennifer raised her glass, her voice weaving into the laughter around us. To Alice, the woman who not only rose on her own but helped others rise with her. Glasses clinked, gentle and warm. I stood in the room, not dazzling but alive, and I didn't feel like a guest in my own space. I looked around. None of these people were bound to me by blood. Yet their eyes held more truth than anything I had ever received at a family dinner in 30 years. We sat close, without the distance of hierarchy, without expectations, without questions like, when will you marry? When will you have kids? Why can't you be more like Daniel? Here, I wasn't anyone's shadow. I was Alice, my own woman. Night fell. I stepped onto the porch, where the old pine my grandmother had planted still stood. On its branches, Jennifer had tied small slips of paper for wishes. I wrote one simple line and hung it there. May every woman find the place she belongs, without needing permission to stay. When I returned inside, the guitar still strummed, and in the kitchen Olivia was laughing with Linda over a new vegetarian recipe. I poured another glass of wine, stood a moment at the doorway, my heart like a lake, finally free of storms, rippling only with gentle waves. In this life, some bonds we are born into without choice, but others we are free to build from scratch. For me, the most precious bonds are not in bloodlines, but in the presence of those who choose to be here. And now, I had chosen the right people to walk with, and the right place to live true. You've just heard my story, a journey of struggle, from being overlooked in my own family to building a community where voices are heard and opportunities are shared. Maybe you're wondering, if it were you, would you have the courage to stand up, to speak out, to challenge the injustices brushed off as just family matters? Or would you stay silent, enduring it as so many of us have, thinking that's what it means to be patient? I share this not to boast and not to stir hate. I share it because I believe there are others out there who have been pushed aside at the table, compared unfairly, or forced to step back in a script someone else wrote for the family. If you've ever been there, I hope my story shows you you're not alone. And more importantly, you have the right to rewrite your own script. Family isn't always defined by blood. Sometimes strangers become the ones who give you real warmth, respect, and love. What matters is daring to choose, daring to walk away from what wounds you, and daring to begin again with yourself. And what about you? Have you ever felt overlooked, left behind, or compared to someone else in your own family? What do you think about the way I chose to face and overcome it? Share your thoughts in the comments. I treasure every honest story, and if you found meaning in this story, don't forget to follow the channel. There are many more heartfelt journeys, real slices of family life, of choices, forgiveness, and growth waiting to be told. Thank you for staying with me until the very end. We'll meet again in the next story.